Alright, so next up we're going to be adding the rail system and the gas tube and the barrel, as well as the gas block. So what we need to do is we need to go into our reference images. So the same way we've been doing it, image reference. And then we're going to scroll, pick our barrel, load the reference image, go with what we want here, and then I'm going to as well as unhide this because we're going to use this little piece from our reference to kind of match up with the barrel to kind of get the right size going here. So we're going to go with the 10.3 inch barrel, the carbine version. I'm going to go ahead and move that pretty much where it needs to be. Kind of move it down a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to be moving it over and in. Now we can go ahead and hide this and get started on the barrel part. So we just kind of want to get this little crease right here lined up with this. Make this open gap right here as wide as this gap right here. I wish I could be more precise with the lineups, if that makes sense, but unfortunately we can't because I've compiled most of this separately, so we're going to just go with it like this, about to this position. So from here I'm going to go to add a cylinder. We're going to rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees and kind of scale it in. Get it up to the maximum, which is this ring on the outside, this large ring here. I'm going to grab this and just push it like so. We're going to inset it and then extrude it. And for this face, we're going to take this edge, inset it, extrude it. I'm just going to take this, kind of scale it in, shift Y so it doesn't scale on the Y. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this all the way to here, extrude it, scale it down, extrude it, extrude it. We're going to scale it up again, out. We're going to go slightly in with it, about like so. I'm going to actually make that a little bit smaller, so S shift Y, about like that. And it's not super precise, but we want it to look as good as we possibly can get it to look. So we're going to move that to here, inset the face, and then we're just going to pull it. We're not going to extrude it. Extrude it again, inset it, pull it slightly, kind of make it like so. We're going to extrude it again, extrude it down and out, and that's going to be our barrel. So we're going to go ahead and sharpen it, put a little bevel on it, get right here. We're going to just mark all of our angles as sharps, and we're going to change the limit method from angle to weight. Same with these here. Mark as sharp. And then I'm going to take this and just bevel it once as like a little chamfer. Grab this face, inset it. And 223 is very small, by the way, but for me, I would rather this to be good enough, so we could say it's either 223 or 300 blackout. So I'm going to make it the width of 300 blackout, and we're just going to extrude it in just enough. Doesn't have to go too far in. Now we have our barrel here. To get rid of some of these lines, I'm just going to add in loop cuts here, just so we can get rid of some of those lines that show up. And I'm going to go ahead and push that out. And if you'll notice, we do have an issue here. That means we made it too big. That's not a big deal. We can go ahead and scale it in to where it no longer does that. Just like so. Want it to where it's slightly underneath that line there. Now we got kind of a short and stubby little barrel, which is what we want. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and get rid of these pieces because we don't need them. X, faces. We can go ahead and fill this in. And I'm going to inset it and merge at center. GY. Put it right here. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller, just so we're not overlapping or doing anything too crazy. I'm going to mark that and unmark this. Okay, we have our barrel. A little bit. Now we have our barrel in. I'm going to kind of drop it just a little bit because it's not at the correct height. Just slightly. Next up, we're going to do the gas block. So I'm going to go back in, add a cylinder. And for this, we're going to Shift S, snap cursor to selected, and then we're going to Shift S, snap selection to cursor, RX90, and move it into position. Needs to go right up against this, slightly bigger. We're going to take from here, go all the way to the other side with it, make sure we've got them. And we're going to pull it up and squish it in. Just like so. To where you have this kind of shape going on here. We can actually squish it in a little bit more and squish it down. It doesn't have to be ridiculously high, just high enough. So we have this shape going. We can go ahead and sharpen it and throw a bevel on it as well. We're going to mark these edges here as sharps, and we're going to change it from angle to weight. To where we kind of got this shape going. Next up, we're going to add in yet another cylinder, but this time we're going to make it a little bit less, have a little bit less geometry, so we're going to do 16 verts. RX90. Get it to this position here. Scale it in. about like so. We're going to take this face, extrude it outwards, then extrude it again, and we're going to drop it, rotate it slightly. We'll do the same for this, rotate it slightly, take that edge loop again, extrude it along the Y, rotate it slightly, extrude it up, rotate it slightly, and extrude it along the Y once more. So we kind of got this little shape going. Next, I'm just going to grab these two loops here, bevel them, grab these two loops and do the same thing. We have the gas tube. We can go ahead and sharpen that just to apply smooth shade to it. And we got our gas tube. So next up, we are going to add the rail system. So we're going to Shift A, Image Reference, and we're going to pull up our rails here. Go ahead and size them up. And we're going to make sure that the rail spacing is about the same, so that way we know we're about on par for the size. A little bit bigger. We're on par for size, so we're going to get that scooched into position. We might have to go slightly smaller with it, but that's fine. You want basically the bottom of the rail to kind of be flush with this point here. I'm going to scale it just a little bit, and we don't have to follow it exactly 1-to-1. We can change it up a little bit, make it what we want. Okay. Now that we've got this in position, we can go ahead and start making the rail. So I'm going to do a little bit of stealing of geometry here. We're going to take from here over to here. We're just going to select this edge here. Same with this one. We're going to Shift D to duplicate it. P selection. We're going to go up, change this to rail _ high. Going to go into edit mode and merge these at center. Going to merge these at last. So I'm going to take this entire segment here and just extrude it out like so. Take this edge, push it right up against that one, and then from here we're just going to try to match our reference. So we're going to go GZ, pull it down, and then we're going to go ES, X, GZ, try to get it to line up with the bottom of this one, just like so. We have kind of this shape going on. I'm basically wanting this to kind of match what we have up top as far as that goes, and I'm going to go ahead and fill that. Grab the front here, fill it, fill it. And then we're going to tab A, Shift N, sharpen it. And we got this little segment type situation going. Next up, we need to get the cutouts for the rails, so I'm going to go in and add a cube. Scale it in. I'm going to try to get it to match this space as much as we possibly can. So there's one way of doing it. I'm going to do it the easy way. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow these two lines here, Shift D, P selection. I'm going to grab that, Shift S, origin to geometry. I'm just going to fill this in, scale it on the X, extrude it upwards a bit, A, Shift N. We have a box, so I'm going to get rid of the bevel and the weighted normal. So that's the perfect width. Make sure we're on par for height. Going to add a modifier, array 0, 2. We're just going to slightly get it to where it needs to be. Make sure we are good to go, which in this case it does look like we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up. Get it close to the reference as we can. Go ahead and count it all the way out. And before we go too crazy, we're just going to add in some support loops. The way we're going to do this is the way we did it last time. We're just going to add them in the middle and go from there. Okay, once we've got all of those lined up and ready to go, we can go ahead and just do the Boolean function. So difference, H, sharpen. We're going to select all just to make sure, Shift A in, make sure we're all good to go. So with this, I'm going to go through just like the last time and connect all of these up and clean it up, but I'll speed it up. That way we don't have to deal with all of the annoying repetitive stuff. Next up, we need to add in these little cuts. So I'm going to add in a cube, scale it down and in, all that good stuff, just to kind of get it right about the same size as one of these. Make it slightly bigger. Now I'm going to go in and scale this on the Y to where we have kind of a shape like so. Apply the scale. I'm going to take these two top ones, bevel them, and these two bottom ones, and we're going to bevel them as well, to where we're left with a shape like so. Go ahead and try to get it rotated to kind of a similar angle. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to duplicate it, rotate it on its X by 180 degrees, G, Z, Z, try to get it to match up as best as we can. Just like so. Scoot it over. And then we can join these two together. Shift S, origin to geometry. Go into this view, scoot it over. Get it right to where we need it to be. Then we can add a modifier, array 0, and we're just going to drag this out to where it's right about where we want it to be. Count the array up, and then I'm just going to kind of scoot it till we get it how we like it. So if you notice there's an uneven gap, we can fix this by grabbing this, GY, scooting them to a more appropriate length between each other. And we can kind of tighten up this just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and apply the array. And I'm just going to have everything that's selected and move it over just a hair to kind of get the spacing to be somewhat even. Going to take this, chop it off, do the same thing on this end here. Chop it off. We're going to C-sharp it, apply the scale, and then we're just going to grab these two edges here, these two edges, and give them a nice little bevel. We're going to then duplicate them, Shift D. So once we get them down there, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it to where they're as close as they possibly can be. And we want it kind of mirrored, if that makes sense. Mirrored from what we have up top. Get those there. Can join these two together. Difference. H. Sharpen. Next up, we're going to add in the slots for the M-LOK segments. I'm going to go draw a box, bevel said box. Well, we're going to draw a box, push it all the way through. Apply the scale, and then we're going to take all of the edges here and bevel them just slightly. And make sure we're about in the middle, like so. I'm going to then add in a regular array modifier. Get it close to where it needs to be. Up the count, just like so. We want it to slightly be longer than our little cuts here. Okay, we can go ahead and sharpen this. we're going to duplicate this. Shift S, snap selection to cursor, RY90, GZ, and we're just going to push it forward to where it kind of lines up with the other ones. Just like so. Q, difference, H, sharpen. Now we have pretty much our cutouts for the M-LOK segments. Now that we've got our rail all finished, we can go ahead and start doing some cleanup on it. Start merging some lines that need to be merged, get stuff really close, and just do some regular cleanup. So I'm just going to start grabbing lines and moving them where they're giving me issues like this. I'm just going to do some basic cleanup and all that good stuff, so I'll go ahead and fast forward this as well so you guys don't have to watch me do all of it. Okay, now that we're done with that, all we have to do now is add in the little locking segment, and that's going to be pretty easy. So we're going to do Shift A, add a cube, kind of get it into the proper position. I'm going to do something like this, make it a little bit wider. Then I'm going to grab this, scooch it forward a little bit. I'm going to make sure we're right on the money of the rail. Just like so. Next up, I'm going to take this front end after I apply the scale, give it a chamfer, just like this. And we're going to Q booleans union. Go ahead and hide. Go ahead and C# it. Now we can Shift H to hide it, and we're going to go in and clean up some of this mess here. So we need to turn off our bevel to see what we got going on. And if I slide this, this is our issue. So a quick and easy way to fix this is I'm going to press K for knife and then C over. Now we have it connected there. And then I can merge it last. Merge it last. Join that together. And we can do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. Get an orthographic view, knife, and we'll just mark it over. Grab that, move it to last, join that together, and then we're going to take all of them, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. And as you notice, that didn't really grab this second verse here. That's not a problem. I'm just going to make sure we are nice and ready to go, in which case it does look like we are there. So now we have this nice shape going. The only thing I want to do is kind of clean this up a little bit. So we'll just make that a nice tri or quad. And we'll do the same, well, we don't have to do the same thing on the other side. So now that we have that there, we can go in and add in little cutouts for the screws. So we'll do D circle. Okay, I had a bit of an issue with my cutters wanting to show up over and over again, but that's not a problem. So continuing on, I'm just going to add in some circles here. I press V to array it, just so we have 2 of them. I'm going to push that almost all the way through till we're left with something kind of like so. Just move those a little bit forward. Leave them there, and we can see sharpen this. And we're looking pretty good. So next up, what we can do is we're going to go ahead and Shift H again. So that way we're left with this. We can go into edit mode and select all of these faces that we see that we're no longer going to need from our booleans that we just did. Okay, now that we've got all those, I'm going to hold Control and hit the plus sign. X faces. We're going to take these 2 end faces here. X faces. That way we're left with something like so. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete these as well. That way we're just left with an empty hole. Once we have our empty hole there, we're going to go into orthographic mode and then face selection and X-ray. And we're just going to grab the rail segment. All of these faces here. We're going to do P, selection, go back into the rail itself. I'm going to Q, modifier, solidify, and we're going to make it a little bit thicker. Next up, I'm going to get rid of the weighted normal and move the solidify above the bevel, just so we can see what we got. And that's pretty thick, good enough for me. So what we're going to do from here is go ahead and apply it. Next up, I'm going to go and add a mirror modifier, so that way all the stuff we did on one side will show up on this side. Go ahead and move the mirror all the way back up again. Enable cage. What we're going to do next is I'm just going to grab all of these faces X faces. We're going to join the rail back to the main part of the body. Control J. We go back into edit mode, select all, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. That joined it back together for us. Next up, I'm going to take this interior edge, go all the way down with it, extrude it, and just bring it to the middle. Same with this, extrude it along, go out of edit mode. We can apply the mirror. And now all we need to do is go up and clean in some of this mess here. Go to the other end and do the same thing. I don't have my mirror on anymore, so what I'm going to do is just apply my mirror. GX, move that. Apply the mirror again, and now it's all connected. Go in and fill this up. And select all, shift in, just to make sure our normals are good to go, which they don't look like they are good to go. We're going to go in to our shading, face orientation, make sure our face orientation is all good to go. Then we can sharpen it. We can get out of face orientation just to make sure we don't have any backwards geometry, in which case we do not this time. I'm going to turn off the bevel just to see what we got going on here. Grab both of these, S, Shift, X. We'll just make them smaller and move them up a little bit out of the way. Next up, what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab all of these faces in here. Get rid of them. And just start doing some filling in and some cleanup. So I'm going to add a mirror modifier just so I can get a nice line down the middle and apply it right away. So that way I can grab these and fill them in without having any issues. Now that we've got that filled in, I can go ahead and ES. At center. Now we've got those in, we can go ahead and start doing some cleanup. And it's going to be some pretty simple cleanup. J, and I'm just doing really wide triangles just to kind of contain some of the N-Gon madness that we've created here. Okay, now that we have that all connected and ready to go, we have somewhat of a rail system going for us. So we can go ahead and press Alt-H to bring everything back, and we're going to go ahead and hide the cutters and grab the lower receiver and hide it. Now we have our rail. All the proper stuff in it. We can see the gas tube going underneath it and the barrel properly. Now that we have that installed, we can move on to the next phase.